Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, September 23rd, 2024. I am the Board Chair, Eric Eldridge. The following meeting is being recorded and broadcast by Tyngsborough Media. The meeting is available through our local cable access channels on Xfinity and Verizon Fios and as a live stream on our website, www.tyngsboroughma.gov. A recording of this meeting will be available through the video on demand portion of our website. Open meeting laws require that any member of the audience who intends on recording either video or audio so declare that now. Seeing none, after instruction from the State Fire Marshal and the Tyngsborough Fire Chief, in the event of an emergency, there is an exit directly across from me at the rear of the room and one to my left. With that, I would like to ask all those who can to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we'll go to introductions, starting from my left.
Good evening, Jacqueline Schnackers, Executive Assistant.
Good evening, Mike Moran.
Hello, Jackie Gilfus.
Good evening, Colin Loisel, Town Manager.
Good evening, Catherine Foster, Assistant Town Manager.
Excellent. We're going to pass on meeting minutes until our next meeting to approve those. So we'll go right into citizen business time. Is there any citizens that would like to speak? Sir, please come to the microphone. Give us your name and address. And the floor is
John
yours.
Murphy, 61 Ting Road. I just want to introduce something to the record today. I've sent an email to the board already with this information, but I wanted to speak about it today. There was an online discussion on Twitter, Facebook, and likely others that suggested our select board was inviting illegal aliens to Tyngsborough. I did my own independent research, as one always should, to find the source. This website happened to be a website, welcomingrefugees2025.org, and it described an open letter that was being sent to President Biden on September 12th, purportedly from local officials across the country celebrating illegal aliens and welcoming them into our communities. Ron Schneider admitted to signing that letter as a Tyngsborough Select Board member. In doing so, he's violated at least Section 3.1b of the Town of Tyngsborough Code of Conduct policy of elected and appointed officials. It's a serious infraction. Makes no difference whether, in retrospect, people agree or disagree with the content of the letter. Mr. Snyder abused his position and authority as a select board member by presenting his own personal political beliefs as an official representation of our select board and our town of Tyngsborough. At a minimum, he should issue a public apology and a retraction of that letter on that website, and to all recipients of that original letter, stating that his views do not represent the town of Tyngsborough, nor is it the official position of the Select Board. I look forward to the board's discussion and collective response. And while I have the opportunity, one other thing I'd like to say is it is election time now, and I'd just like to remind everybody to remain civil. Don't, reach out and hurt other people with words or with vandalism. Everyone agree to disagree about certain policies, and we can move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the audience like to speak?
Billy Crawford, 83 Frost Road. This is very uncomfortable. Ron Snyder and family are good people. They're good people. It's very unfortunate that we have a president that's allowed millions of people come into our country without our permission. And that President Biden is what caused this dissension in our town. I'm not saying Ron may have made an error in judgment and maybe operating in a vacuum, but I blame the President of the United States for what's happening here. I don't trust that immigrants from any other country, and that this was going to be primarily from Afghanistan, for instance, would be properly vetted, that we wouldn't have terrorists coming into our community. I don't trust them. I don't think anybody should trust them. And that's really all I have to say. And we don't know how many residents could come here. For instance, a little town in Ohio, 60,000 people, they flew in 20,000 uninvited guests. How many people could Tyngsborough accept? So we just have to be careful that our leaders are not operating in a vacuum. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Well, we're going to push down the town manager's report. Colin knows this. It happens. And we're going to go right into the citation presentation for Officer Evan Donnelly. Chief, take it away.
Thank you. On Thursday, September 5th, the Tyngsborough Police and Fire Department were dispatched to 186 Frost Road for a reported structure fire. Officer Donnelly, you arrived first in less than a minute and found residents who told you that there was a kitchen fire within one of the apartments and that the resident was still inside. You immediately responded to the apartment, and as you entered the hallway to find the unit, you found that there was heavy smoke, that your sight was obstructed, and it was difficult to initially find it. Upon locating the apartment, you opened the door, resulting in heavier smoke pouring out into the hallway. Being familiar with the resident of this unit, you called for him by name, but received no immediate response. Upon yelling repeatedly, the resident answered, and you located him in the kitchen. The stove in the kitchen was the source of the fire, and it was still burning, as you safely evacuated the resident, who was 82 years old, from the building. The resident suffers from numerous medical issues, which includes difficulty walking and breathing. You successfully took this resident outside of the building where he was now safe. You then immediately returned to the building, grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall, and put the fire out. This all happened prior to the arrival of the fire department. You also evacuated other residents from the building as well. Sergeant Bob Cody, the shift supervisor that night, has recommended you for accommodation due to your actions. I could not agree more with his recommendation. There is no question that the life of the resident in this apartment was in peril, and without your quick and decisive actions, this incident would have resulted in death or serious injury, as well as the spread of the fire in the building. Your actions demonstrate courage, dedication, and selflessness, and uphold the values and oath police officers are expected to meet. Officer Donnelly, your actions in that day reflect the highest standards of our department, and for that, our agency and town is incredibly proud and grateful. I'm awarding you a life-saving award, and you will be provided an administrative day off as well to be used at your discretion. On behalf of the police department, the town of Tyngsborough, I thank you for your continued dedication and professionalism. There's your award. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. I want to thank you, obviously, for supporting our department once again and having us here today. And you'll note all the people in the audience, Officer Donnelly's close circle, and officers here tonight in support. You know, this is something our officers do throughout the year. This is a situation where, you know, we try to commend whenever possible, but these type of things do happen, and our officers in Tyngsborough, I can rest assured, are always right on the spot. And Officer Donnelly, well job. Well done again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
So just to circle back on that, Chief, you talked about it. I appreciate, and we appreciate, what our public safety folks do every day. You know, you went into the situation totally selfless and looking to help others. And we are greatly indebted to you folks every day so that you keep us safe. As soon as I read and, you know, the chief notified us about this, I said, oh, we need to have him come in and make sure that this is recognized. Because far too often, folks recognize the negative and it's real important that we also recognize the positive. So thank you all, but especially you, Officer Donnelly, for doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
I just want to say that every single person that I work with would have done the exact same thing. This isn't an individual effort. It's a team effort, and I just have to thank everybody here, the whole police department and the fire department. That's all. It's a team effort, and we would all do the same thing without even thinking about it. So.
Nice work.
Thank you all. You're all certainly welcome to stay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Colin, we'll jump into yours, if
Yes.
that works for you.
Absolutely.
Generous, thank you. Somebody's
That's
over
perfectly
there.
fine. We're used to this.
Okay, Colin,
All right.
Town Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to give a shout out to our Board of Health for what was a fantastic opioid vigil on September 14th. I unfortunately missed the event, but thanks to Tyngsborough Media, I was able to stream it, and they did a fantastic job. The Health and Safety Fair was this weekend, and it was a huge hit despite the unfavorable weather. We had all kinds of DPW equipment there, fire trucks and ambulances, police vehicles, all kinds of different SWAT tools, and there were even horses. There were also way too many reptiles in the elementary school for my liking, but they were also a big hit. So I just want to thank our health department, police and fire departments, and our DPW for putting that event together. I think this is at least the third year they've done it, and it gets bigger and better every single year. The parking lot project at the police station is complete. The final step is that the sign that we ordered and are installing is still back ordered. So once that gets in, we'll install it. But in terms of the actual parking lot, that work is now completed. An update on the home rule petition that was submitted by town meeting to the legislature. It is making its way through the process. Unfortunately, it looks like the House will modify it to restrict 2 of the licenses to the, quote, Middlesex Road corridor and 1 to the Westford Road corridor. This is not exactly what town meeting asked for, but the House Counsel insists that the House can modify any legislation that goes for it. It's largely out of our control, but what I will say is that when we think about where our economic development most likely will take place, it's along that corridor, so we'll take what we can get at this point. And I just want to thank Senator Kennedy, played a huge role in helping the House committee to the best that they would understand what we were seeking to accomplish, and he called me 5 or 6 times in one day trying to help move it along. So I do appreciate his support, and hopefully that'll pass before January 1st, and we'll be able to start filling some vacancies on Middlesex Road. We'll talk more about Fall Town Meeting later, but as a reminder, it will take place on October 22nd at 7 p.m. at the elementary school. We'll host a pre-town meeting information session on October 15th. That's a Tuesday at 6 p.m. here in the community room. The warrant has 8 articles, 7, I'm sorry, that's not correct, there's 7. 2 of them are zoning amendments. The planning board will hold a public hearing on those 2 articles on Thursday, October 3rd, and again on Thursday, October 17th. Just a quick update on the police chief search process. The deadline to apply was September 14th. Last week, we met with the search firm that we contracted with to review the 12 applications we received and narrowed down the pool to the ones that we felt were qualified for a first round interview. That's the structured interview process that we talked about when we first outlined the process. We have 5 candidates that we've offered interviews to. All of them represent a wide range of command experience, law enforcement background, education, training, and familiarity with our region. So I'm pleased with the pool that we have. As I've mentioned previously, in the meantime, I'll appoint Deputy Chief Sean Woods to serve as interim chief of police effective October 1st, and until the process is complete and a permanent chief is named. On that note, I'll remind everybody that the public appreciation event for Chief Howe will take place on Wednesday evening from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Old Town Hall. There will be a speaking portion at the start of the event, but really the rest of the event will be an opportunity for the public to share their appreciation with Chief Howe and his best wishes as he retires. And then on a more excited note, I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that last week marked 1 year since this board appointed me as town manager. I wanted to share my appreciation to this board for its support and guidance, to our residents who have been a huge part of our success, and of course to our staff for the hard work they do every day to make Tyngsborough a great place to work and live. I did want to take a minute to reflect on some of our collective accomplishments, which are a reflection of the people that work in town hall and the police department, the fire department, the library, and all across town government. We settled 6 collective bargaining agreements in 1 year. All of those reflected the value that our staff bring to the town while balancing the need to protect our financial situation. The contracts aren't good just for our current employees, but we know when people leave, because we have a challenge recruiting them, we end up paying more to replace them. So this will help us retain employees, but also recruit the very best to work here in Tyngsborough. We took a not-so-great law and made it work for Tyngsborough, adopting the multifamily overlay district, which was required by law, and I think that the committee did that in a way that protected the town's character. We use that in every single grant application we submit now because we're one of a few that can claim credit for that. We launched the town's first civic leadership academy to bring residents closer to the work that's being done at town hall and across town government to hopefully generate new residents that are interested in serving on our various elected and appointed boards. We reworked our budget process and have more work to do there to be more interactive with the public through budget office hours so that residents can better understand the budget and provide feedback. And we continue to increase our communication efforts to reflect the importance of public engagement in the local government process. While this work continues, I'm proud of the work we've done to date, and I think the results of this work are clear and very positive. So just a big appreciation to the staff. Jackie and Kat, obviously the transition was very, very smooth because of the two of them, but certainly also to this board for your support.
Thank you. Kat?
I'm happy to share that the town is exploring the Department of Energy Resources Climate Leader Communities Program. This is a new program that has evolved from the Green Communities Program, which Tyngsborough is a member of. It creates a new voluntary framework for meeting the state's greenhouse gas reduction targets by providing tools and resources to help municipalities reduce emissions and maximize energy efficiency. By receiving this designation, municipalities are able to tap into additional grant funding to support a number of projects from construction and implementing energy efficiency activities to adopting energy efficiency policies.
Excellent. Thank you. I will open it up to the board for any questions or comments. Did you want to start, Select Person Gilfus?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. Everything is wonderful in this update. Thank you to you both. And Colin, I'm so glad that you're here with us, and happy return anniversary last week.
Thank you.
Return anniversary.
I like that.
Mr. Moran?
Oh, horrible year. Oh, nothing was accomplished. So no, congratulations on 1 year, Colin. Fantastic stuff. Entertaining at best.
Absolutely.
All good stuff. Really appreciate just the work that's been going on, right? I think the footbridge is almost to completion now, right? All that good stuff. Or I saw a guy today out there weed whacking to make things, beautify the area a little bit more. So very thankful for everyone in the town administration, the town buildings, town offices. And I think with your leadership, it's a lot of good, positive things have come. So thank you very much, and congrats on the 1 year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's amazing how fast time flies, that it's a year. Don't know what happens to all of that time, but it goes by quickly. Good to hear on the Climate Leaders Community Program. The green communities, we just got another grant for the schools, so tremendous opportunities for us to get in on these things early and to let the state know that we're doing some great things, and that if they're willing to help us out with funding of those things, that we can do even more. So great to hear that that's happening. Again, lots of stuff going on. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that people can see this update on a variety of places?
You can listen to this tomorrow, wherever you get your podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. There'll be a digital version, and you can read a summary every month in the Neighbor to Neighbor.
Fantastic.
That is great. Excellent. Okay. Well, we can jump right into new business now. An update on the select board and town manager goals. You going to take us through that, Colin?
Yes, I will only cover where there are updates. I'm not going to read the whole thing over for everybody.
Thank you.
if you're looking at this online, you'll see that on all these items, we have upcoming items. They're green if they haven't started. Where they have started, they're back to bold, and they're in black text to kind of differentiate. So starting out, the goal number 1 was to review the inventory of town-owned lands and buildings to determine a plan or future use for each asset, and it lists some of the buildings that it should include. Pending items is to still work with the media department to identify the current cost of a potential PEG center and identify next steps for the $800,000 that is remaining that was allocated from the PEG center back in 2019. Roni and I talk about this all the time. One of the things we're cognizant of is the current state of PEG funds that come from our cable providers. Certainly, we've signed now new agreements with both of them that maintain a certain percent, but what we can't control is that people are cutting the cord more and more. And so there's a bunch of legislation we've talked about in the past that would offset that, but until we have a more concrete idea, I think that both of us are a little skeptical about investing such a large sum of money if it's not going to be sustainable. Another upcoming item was to start thinking about considerations of the new 120 Westford Road rec building as we started to get situated in the new clubhouse on the Sherburne parcel. That building is now online. One of the things that Allison and I have talked about is what really will the use of that building be. We know that the basement is entirely storage right now for the rec department. One of the things that we're more interested in and will require some further development is using it more as an open community center. We've spent and are spending currently a lot of money on that parcel to draw people there between all the sport amenities. CPC has approved and town meeting will consider increasing the walking trails on the site. So we'd love for that building to be a place that people could congregate. Of course, we know that requires staffing to some extent. So while we're looking at that and figuring out how we can make that work using our existing budget and existing staff, we're also doing a brief exploration of limited rentals in the building. We already rent out exclusively the First Parish and the Old Town Hall. And while obviously our rec director isn't physically opening the building for people, it is still a lot to manage 2 buildings. So adding a third that's primarily used for rentals would probably not be sufficient. So we're doing we have a trial run of a very small rental that's happening in there later this month to see if it works for a rental. It's not like the Old Town Hall in terms of space. There's no technology like there is at the Old Town Hall. So we'll see. But once we know for certain what this building can do and what we'll use it for, we'll have a better idea of what, if any, need the 120 Westford Road building has. Sort of piggybacking on that, this winter, the board approved a rental policy that provides at a very discounted rate rentals of the Council on Aging. And so while we have seen some use of it, the use we've seen so far doesn't match the demand that we saw when we issued the request for public support. Of the folks that are using that building, we're getting positive feedback, and many are repeat using it, and there's been no impact on the Council on Aging. So perhaps in a few months we think about the policy and if it makes sense and if we need to make some changes. But I think that before we can say for certain that the 120 West Road building does or doesn't have a use, I'd like to see those 2 pieces kind of come together. Another upcoming item was to work toward establishing a facilities division once the DPW is established, and using that to develop a townwide maintenance schedule as opposed to what was a very isolated process that existed at the time these goals were set. The good news is the DPW Act passed. We technically have a facilities division right now. Unfortunately, it only consists of 1 full-time and 1 part-time employee. We're actively trying to hire a second part-time employee, which was included in the fiscal 25 budget. But we have been able to use the existing staff to develop a centralized work order system, a schedule of big maintenance items. Previously, departments would kind of coordinate their own preventative maintenance, which was not an efficient system. You know, we'd have a vendor out on a Monday doing the Council on Aging, and then he'd be back in town on a Wednesday doing Town Hall. And so making all of that flow through the facilities division we have today has certainly helped on that front. So hopefully we're able to fill that third position within the facilities division and really start building up from there.
So I guess the question for the board is, do we want to go, I don't want to wreck Colin's flow. Do we want to ask questions individually on each of the items, if you have any questions? Anything on the first one?
I think we can go through them, and then if something perks out, we can take notes and then ask it.
You good with that? Or
I have no preference. If you want to ask while I'm
just
on
one of
an
those
item,
ones while you're talking, you may be talking for a long time,
Yeah.
so maybe,
I'm happy
maybe
to
we'll
take
break
questions as
after
we
a
go.
few.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Then I will move on to Goal 2, develop a 5-year plan for staffing, services, equipment, and infrastructure for each department with a specific focus on police and fire. An upcoming item was to work with the report that LaValle Brensinger was creating to come up with a comprehensive facilities assessment and to talk about long-term planning. At this point, we've completed the comprehensive capital plan, and I have no doubt that that will be incorporated into this year's capital asset process. The report highlighted specific deficiencies for both departments, and I think will serve as a Kickstarter for a conversation probably in October about the next step that came out of the Public Safety Building Study Committee, which was to really narrow down the site for either a combined public safety building or standalone sites. And so we'll do some work leading up to a conversation in October to really help the board visualize what those options are and what the pros, cons, and kind of barriers to each one is. But we'll be able to use a lot of the information generated from that LaValle Brensinger report so that we can assess the feasibility on each particular site. Moving to the next one that has an update, improve operational efficiencies in departments and effectively account for costs and non-tax revenues. We talked about, when these goals were first set, holding a strategic planning retreat with department heads. We did that in August. We had a variety of conversations regarding the challenges that each department faces, as well as having them come up with 2 goals for creating efficiencies within each individual's department. So we did a half-day meeting in August. Those goals are being used to guide a conversation on the 5-year budgeting forecast that we're working on, and obviously will help us figure out priorities for fiscal year 26. We've had some good conversations, some initial conversations, I would say, with the school department about how we would incorporate their needs into a 5-year budget. The challenge with school district budgets is that they are so complex and kind of hard to predict. But we think that working together as we have from all the budgets to date and as the school did on the current budget, which reflected their 2.7% increase, we think that we can come to kind of a standard that we, maybe we can't say how much of their money will be in staffing versus expenses, but I think we can come to an agreement on what we expect their budgetary increase needs to be. So similar to how for at least one more fiscal year and going back 4 years, we've been able to account in the budget process that their budget will increase 2.7% as a part of the agreement we had on the middle school. That's kind of the concept that we both think is feasible and certainly would be a good starting point on the budget piece.
Okay. Let me ask, because you can take a break now. Ask a question on that one. Are we including capital items in that mix?
Not at this current moment. I expect to use, the thing about capital that I will take responsibility for as well, because I did the capital plan for quite a few years, is that every year we certainly approve the current capital plan. And I think because we're generally rushing to get that plan fixed and see what fits in the budget, I don't think that we really scrutinize future requests with as great level of certainty as we would need to if we're really saying this is the 5-year capital plan.
Right.
I think that our past practice has been departments submit requests, we figure out what we can fund, and then we push everything else into future years, and then we have a list of what we know is on the radar. What I think we need to do better through this capital plan, and Kat and I have talked about, is really figuring out what is feasible in the next fiscal year, what is feasible, so that when we say we have a 5-year capital plan, it's what we actually can afford. I don't think that we've done that very effectively to date, and I think having that coupled with a 5-year operating budget forecast will be much more helpful.
Yeah, let me give you an example, and that's good to hear, because, and I know, because I'm on capital.
Right.
But one of the things that, just thinking about, came up in my Facebook memories, the football field, or the athletic field at the high school, which was not a small amount of money. That is over $1 million and supposed to only last about 10 years. I think we're 5-6 years into it. I can't remember what. So I look at that and say, are we saving up? Are we planning? Because I'm told that it's going to be $1 million and it can last anywhere. I think we got 13 years the last time. But if it's only supposed to last 10 years, we should probably start thinking about that. And I know that we tried to get the, a fund where we can start dealing with assets and the capital items and have a capital stabilization fund, and that wasn't funded the way we were looking like, but we still have to fund that. Every year we have to figure out how we're going to put money into that so that we don't have these, oh, here's $1 million surprise. Oh, here's a $1.5 million surprise with some of these items. You know, I'm thinking about like the roofs, the athletic fields, the ladder trucks. You know, some of those things we can defer, but at some point we know we need them. And when we start looking at those numbers, I'm sitting there saying, we got to get in front of residents by saying, guys, here's it's going to cost a lot of money. We need to start saving some money, not a rainy day, but for those big ticket items to, you know, we can't have the big spike on those types of things because it's going to be really tough to manage that. So I just want to make sure that it's good that we're thinking operationally, but we also need to start thinking about some of the capital items as well. So, sorry, the other one that I had some questions on, and then I'll let other people. The 120 Westford Road. For the buildings, it's important for us to understand what the uses are, but let's make sure that we understand what the costs are.
Right.
I don't know that the residents understand that this is what this building costs, you know, whether it's insurance, heating, cooling. It's great to have buildings, and we've added a bunch, but we haven't really taken away too many. And when we think about what the costs are, and again, when we got to save, is it worth it to have a building that's just for storage? So I think we just need to understand what some of those costs are.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's where some people, they don't, if they don't know, how are they gonna make a decision? Okay. Did you have?
No, I think it's a really good point, because, you know, operationally, when you run buildings that are vacant, but you have to keep the heat at certain levels so the pipes don't freeze, all that type of stuff adds up. And so, I just think it's wise to be able to present the full picture as opposed to, oh, I just like a building, let's keep it. No, okay, but operationally, you're gonna donate to help. Not asking for that, but I'm just saying that the contrast is, it's nice to have, but here are the costs. So I do agree with that.
Select Person Gilfus.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I did a drive yesterday through the Sherburne Ave parcel, and the building looks beautiful. Like, even the trash cans are wrapped outside, and they look so nice. And I can see that there's like a beautiful deck on the backside with chairs and tables, and I just want to be there. So it definitely got me fired up for it to be ready and to be usable. I was curious, are there public restrooms in there?
Yes.
And is the idea that the building will be open during the day for people to use those? And is that part of the conversation about staffing and making sure?
Exactly. That is something that we certainly would like to happen. And in the future, it would be something that what I think we'd be looking at this summer particularly is leveraging our like senior tax work-off program, because you don't necessarily we don't need like coaches to teach people how to play. We literally need somebody to open the building, make sure that the bathrooms are clean. Exactly. So those are the only bathrooms on the site. So if we were providing bathroom access, we'd have to do it through the building. But that's kind of what we're thinking that building would be good for.
That's great. I mean, just seriously, yesterday driving through, I was like, I hope that this is going to be open, because I'd want to maybe like sit there and work during the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really, really
We'll have an open house there at some point. CPC was fortunate enough, their last meeting was in that building, because they were talking about money for the projects. We thought it was fitting, so they got to see how nice it was, but we'll do an open house.
great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. The only other thing that I had, which I think I'm just going to follow up with you about, is when you were talking about the PEG funding, I am not familiar with where that money comes from and where it goes, and that
I can
raised
give
some
that
questions
answer in
for
a
me.
nutshell very quickly. It is, all that money is a percentage of what you pay if you have Comcast, if you have Verizon in Tyngsborough. As a part of your cable bill, there's a surcharge that they're required to collect, and that comes directly to the town. It's restricted for use on public, education, and government access programming. And so it all goes to the media department. It can't be spent on my salary, Jackie's salary. And every year at town meeting, based on their operating budget, we transfer the money from the PEG fund to fund their department operations. At one point, in I think 2018 or 2019, $900,000 at the time was earmarked from that revenue to build a new PEG center. Subsequently, we used, I think, roughly $95,000 to upgrade equipment that will go to a new PEG center eventually, so it was related. The remaining money has sat untouched, given the uncertainty, because as people stop paying for cable, that money is drying up, and there's been no movement on a replacement, if you will, for that money.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on that.
Please.
Oh, yeah, so the question I have is, I wonder if we could just, on behalf of the board, Mr. Chair, yourself, to write a letter to Kennedy and Colleen, and basically say, hey, if you're thinking of legislation, we know everyone still needs as much as people can afford internet access versus cable. Could it be that the suppliers, you know, Verizon who supplies it to you, or whomever in the community, they change that surcharge from your cable bill, because we're not doing the cable, and they put it on just the internet access, because we know that that game is change over to, you know, Hulu or something else, and you get rid of Comcast or, you know, whatever. It's just something, and it's an idea to keep the momentum on that, but it's not necessarily anything new from like a new tax. It's more or less continuing something, just changing it over because technology is advancing and we're all getting different things on the web.
Mr. Moran, that's a fantastic idea. It's been filed in the legislature exactly like that, I think 3 years in a row now, and it dies every year. So
Maybe a letter's.
before
from
our
the-
tri-board meeting, I'll get the bill number so that the board can impress on both of them while they're here the importance of such a bill.
Love that. Thank you.
Good idea.
Yeah, it's not my idea, it's just rehashing old ideas.
Okay. Carry on.
All right, moving on to the next one with an update. It's item 6, create an economic development strategy with input from the planning board and relevant stakeholders, which may include a reestablishment of an economic development commission or business association. One of the things that we can talk about is our outreach to local businesses. Obviously, our new town planner and economic development director, Ben McClure, started a couple weeks ago. He's working closely with some of our neighboring communities actually on an outreach plan, seeing what has worked in those communities, and leveraging the gorgeous economic development brochures that we recently put together. Those are really designed to helping people who want to move into Tyngsborough. What he's really interested in on top of that is figuring out what has kept people in Tyngsborough that are here today, what is keeping people from expanding their business in Tyngsborough if they're here, and how Tyngsborough can be of an additional resource. So I think that's an important start, and really seeing what our peers are doing. At the end of the day, we're competing with our neighbors, and so if they're doing something right, we should probably steal it. He's also dove headfirst into the Middlesex 3 Coalition, which is our regional economic development group. One of the things I will say that we are starting to see the benefit from, and we've had a few kind of scoping calls with developers, is the Burlington and Bedford area are kind of now saturated. They're slowly running out of space, and so as they've started to move north along Route 3, still staying within that nice distance to Boston, there's an increased need for housing, which is less attractive, but also for additional office space and lab space, et cetera. So we were both at an M3 event last week. He's going to one this week, and he's really kind of diving in, meeting all the different players. So hopefully we're creating that, maintaining what I think is a good reputation with businesses, but really also thinking about the folks that are here who maybe want to expand, but need a little bit of a push or need some assistance. Item 7 is about the housing production plan with a focus on affordable housing. That work is almost 2/3 of the way complete. I know that our consultant NIMCOG had reached out to the board. She was already looking to attend your meeting on October 7th to give you an update on the housing production plan. So we'll solicit feedback from you at that time as well. But we've done quite a bit of public outreach. We were at the block party this Friday. We spent some time at the Center for Active Living, and we got some positive information from residents there. So we've got almost the way there. We'll refine some of your feedback. I know she's reached out to the Housing Authority to get their feedback, as well as the Planning Board. And so our goal is to have that finished by the end of November. It's due by the end of December, and the state can take, all month of December to review it and approve it. And again, not only does this serve as a good framework when we think about new development in town, it also opens us up to a whole bunch of funding opportunities that otherwise we would not be able to get. Monitoring the plans for the extension of commuter rail from Lowell to Nashua. Over the summer, we heard from the city of Nashua that Rep. Custer of New Hampshire, who's I think wrapping up her term, she's not seeking re-election, had really pushed for this conversation to be back on the radar of the federal transportation officials. Our understanding is that they've conducted several scoping meetings between her office and the Federal Railroad Administration. We've talked to the city of Nashua quite a bit, and those conversations continued as recently as a couple weeks ago about coordinating what our desired outcomes are. At the same time, sort of related and not really, we're still actively talking to the Lowell Regional Transit Authority about expanding bus service to the mall. And so certainly, if we are able to expand bus service, having a train station there as well is a huge kind of multimodal benefit. So it's been revived. I think for a period of time that conversation had kind of fallen asleep, but it's been revived. Hopefully it stays alive. And I think Nashua is very motivated because of the casino opening. They're expecting quite a bit of folks there. This would also help. You could get on a train in Lowell instead of driving through Tyngsborough to get to the casino, and the stop is right at the casino. Moving on to number 10, the solar. We just need to release an RFP. We'll release that probably sometime in November. But we've met with a couple different consultants now at this point about what is feasible. So we'll present, I would expect to get some feedback from the board probably your last October meeting, only because I think, as I've mentioned before, there are a couple options that we can look at. The simplest is just solar on the roofs. In some of our parking lots, we could do canopies if we were so inclined, or we can start with solar on the roofs and expand the project down the road. And again, this would be, because we get so many credits from the Charles George landfill solar farm, here we would be strictly talking about a lease for actual revenue every year. I don't have much of an update on item 11. Obviously, we've worked very well with the district in the last 6 or 7 months to come to agreement on some of our outstanding issues, and I think that we're close to finalizing all of them. The last one I wanted to give an update on is item 15, which is the inquiries into regional shared services. So to date, we've been providing Drake-It with VSO services since April. The current agreement we have with Drake-It is set to expire on November 1st. We were exploring a 3-town regional between Westford, Drake-It, and Tyngsborough. With the type of services that the state requires be delivered, we would have to hire a new full-time person anyway. And so if we only did a 2-person town, it doesn't make sense because each town could just have their own full-time person. Westford is, I think, very close to finalizing an agreement where they join an existing regional VSO. If that's the case, for the time being, I won't recommend pursuing additional regional. We're starting to see on our side us getting taxed a little bit, providing Drake-It and Tyngsborough, so I don't have plans of renewing the IMA with Drake-It beyond November 1st, and we've been talking to help them kind of navigate that transition. But it works. It just requires a few more pieces there. One of the things that is very, very new, I met today with the fire chief in Dunstable, the town administrator in Dunstable, and Wes Russell, our fire chief, to talk about they're looking at seeing what it would take for Tyngsborough to provide regional EMS services. Dunstable is currently provided ambulance services by Trinity. However, because Dunstable doesn't have a base in Trinity, Trinity is coming all the way from Lowell to respond to a Dunstable call, which on average can take 17 minutes. They also operate a full call fire department, so you're also talking about waiting first for the call fire department, and overnight they have 1 police officer on. So you're really talking about tax services. We had 2 years ago done a real deep dive into what it would take, and at the time it didn't make sense. So we've only had very early conversations. It is feasible. It would require some staffing changes on our end, which Dunstable has expressed willingness to financially support. So the chief and I are running some numbers. We're looking at the revenue that Dunstable gets. But it's partnerships like these that I think we're starting to see more and more. I mean, I was on an email chain with a few of our neighbors who are looking to regionalize building commissioner services. So it's something that is definitely coming up more and more frequently, and certainly where we can help, we have helped, and where it makes sense for us to be involved, we're going to continue to look at. And then on 16, conversations about reliable infrastructure and utility services. Obviously, we had a productive meeting a few weeks ago here in this room with National Grid, and so we'll follow up because they were supposed to provide plans on their maintenance, and I think a month is probably more than enough time for them to put it together. So we'll follow up, and hopefully we'll be able to provide that to the board. But that is the update I have on goals right now.
Great. All right, why don't we, questions on the remaining items, comments?
Sure. If there's anything, obviously, the board can do to help conversations with Nashua. I know it's a town manager and all that type of stuff. But if they want, someone who's excited and enthusiastic about a train stop at the Tyngsborough location, Pheasant Lane Mall, I know that's fantastic. Especially the foot traffic from Lowell, 1 station up, in case people, imbibe a bit much or whatever. Hey, they're just getting on a train. They're not having to have police chase them down and all that stuff. So that's a good thing. Train, take a nap to Lowell, and boom, you walk home. That's it's a positive thing, right? But going on that too, I think the bus service would help out a lot of people in the town. That, you know, we do have people who maybe are elderly who don't have rides with the other share services in town, or people who just want to take the bus to avoid it, or if you don't own a vehicle or something like that. So that bus service would be really nice to wrap into that. I think that's all I had on that. And I know the last one also was the National Grid stuff. I'm still interested to hear some of their feedback from, I think it was like a 45 minutes to an hour they spent with us a couple weeks ago, so.
One thing I'll add on the transportation piece is what we've talked to the LRTA about is also the benefit of a bus stop that stops at, you know, if there's a train station, the train station, or if not, at least just the Pheasant Lane Mall, but also hits on its way back south, the 440 Plaza. You know, I should have put this in my town manager's report, but it slipped my mind. I had a great phone call with Sam Park last week, and they have several new businesses lined up, a couple different restaurant themes. And so with the variety of retail and dining and personal services that will be available at the 440, having that link between the casino and the 440 Plaza. And one of the things that we would, you know, that we'd be looking to talk to Sam Park and the developer of the casino is actually a shuttle service that would connect, you know, the Nash I don't think is expected to have any real fine dining experiences. There will obviously be alcohol because it's a casino. But, you know, if we were able to come up with, and Burlington does this very well, and I'm sure other places, I'm just familiar with Burlington, sort of a regional shuttle service that is sponsored by all of the businesses that benefit, that starts at the casino, hits the 440, Epigram, La Santa. I mean, there's a lot of places along Middlesex Road, and certainly if the train is bringing you to the casino, you know, there's no way for you to get to any of those other places if there's not some sort of a regional shuttle.
Right.
But just kind of promoting the fact that when all of those businesses do well, everyone does well, and I think that a shuttle service would do that.
Great idea.
Select-person Gilfus.
I'm very excited about the thought of that shuttle service.
Me too.
You said that and I was like, "Pff, okay.
If it doesn't work out, I'll buy a shuttle bus
Thank
on my
you.
own time. I'll drive it.
Drive it around.
Yeah.
Yeah, regarding National Grid, two things. We have had a couple more power outages even since that meeting, so I know that residents are still thinking about it. I had talked to Roni, and I need to follow up with him about clipping the part of our meeting so it was just the presentation, so we can post that on the website, and the slide deck that they presented, having that available on the site, so that way we can share it out with residents. And then there was contact information in that. Would we encourage residents to contact our community manager directly, or do you want it to come through your office?
I think that it's totally up to the resident. One of the advantages of it coming through our office is that we can track whether or not National Grid's being responsive. If a resident's not worried about that, then that's fine. But I think there's some level of accountability even if we're just copied on it and we know that, you know, a resident wasn't responded back to.
Perfect. And then going back to one of the earlier goals that you mentioned, is it possible that our new town planner could come and visit us in a meeting?
Yes.
And just talk about
Absolutely.
how things are going and their vision, and
Yes.
just to introduce. Awesome, thanks, that's it.
Yeah, relative to that, Colin, I know, so I got to meet him. It would be good if, once he gets settled a little bit, I'd like to see if we could have him come in. One of the things relative to potentially pulling together a committee, because I think we've done a really good job, and thank you for Colin and Kat and Jackie for allowing us to do that. The Town Manager Act has allowed the board to get out of day-to-day. And, we don't have a big agenda here, but it will allow us to be more strategic. And what I'd like to do is to see, can we help with economic growth and think about some of the logistics and transportation, there's housing, we've got some of those subcommittees, but we have that in there, and I'd really like to figure out, I don't want to take the place of economic development. I want help with the planning and figure out how we can do that. So it'd be interesting to see if, we can have that as a topic, maybe after town meeting let's talk through it and see how we can be more strategic and come up with ways to help with the economic development, not only in Middlesex Road, but, throughout the areas of town where it makes the most sense. So that was on my list. And then the only other one, yeah, I think we already talked about it, right? Because we want to make sure, relative to public safety, I'm glad that you're moving on some of the activities so we can get keep some of that momentum, but that will be another topic that we're going to have to figure out again. It's one of those ones, we have the need, we can't kick the can down the road, we can't snap our fingers and we're going to have public safety addressed. But maybe there's an opportunity if there are regional services that we host it if we're going to do some of those things. And then you tie that into, are there state funds available for that? Are there federal funds available to that? So to see how we can tap into the fantastic public safety folks that we have, and be able to share that with other towns in the area. So we need to keep that momentum. But other than that, again, I think we're making some good progress on some of that. I asked Colin to bring this up because I get into that thing where it's like, oh, you think everything's fine, and then there's a couple items where it's like, oh, yeah, we can't forget that, because one of the challenges with having like 14 items or 16 items, you don't always have time for all those. So I think we just need to periodically check in with these things and make sure that we're at least touching upon them. So thank you for that. Anything else relative to goals that you wanted to add? All right, let's move on to old business. Let's review, again, the draft October 22nd, 2024 special town meeting warrant. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to vote by the 7th.
Correct. The plan is to have the select board at its meeting on October 7th post the town meeting warrant.
Got it.
So this is not substantially different than what you saw at your last meeting, except for you'll note that the zoning bylaws that we briefly talked about are now included. I will also note that what's included in the packet is the version that has been reviewed, minor edits made by town council. I will just quickly go through them one more time because it's been a bit of time. Article 1 is an appropriation for the general fund for fiscal year 2025. It's important to note that this is not increasing the taxes that the town will levy. Because at town meeting, we don't allocate all of the money, and this wasn't included, we just need town meeting to approve essentially the expenditure. All of this will come from local receipts, which we're already assessing. So this is not a tax increase, this is not a new fine or fee that we're putting. This is from money that we would have already collected that would have just ended up in free cash. 140,000 of it, the first two items, are for debt service. Again, I acknowledged this at the first meeting. This is something that I should have included in the fiscal 25 budget for May, but I did not, so we are now having to fund it. The good news is the payments aren't due until the end of November anyway, so we're not incurring late fees over this mistake. The bottom two, the $23,567.34, that's for the police department salary and wages account, and that is the difference between what was approved at town meeting in May and where we settled the collective bargaining agreement for the superiors officers effective July 1st. $21,207.14. It's the same thing. That's the difference between what was appropriated for our communication specialists at the May town meeting and where we settled the contract actually just a couple of weeks ago. All of that will go directly into the police department salary and wages line item. So it's not hiring new people, it's not new equipment, it's settled salaries. We went into May town meeting with these unsettled, and so it was harder to predict where they'd land. Article 2 is approved prior year fiscal bills. These are bills that were incurred during a previous fiscal year that now need to be paid using the current fiscal year's budget. This is not a new allocation, so everything you see here will be paid out of the department's fiscal 25 budget. However, the Massachusetts general law require a 9/10 supermajority town meeting vote to pay prior year bills. The bigger ones here are National Grid bills. This is for sewer. This is through no fault of the town. National Grid, periodically, when they think there's an issue with their meters, they'll stop assessing actual bills, and so they do estimated bills. And then a year and a half, sometimes 2 years later in this case, they do a catch-up bill, which is your actuals, and so this is the difference. So this is not that the sewer department used more energy, it's not that the sewer department has all kinds of new pump stations, it's literally National Grid does this periodically. 2 years ago, it happened to us at the police department, but because those were generated before fiscal '25, we need town meeting allocation. Again, no additional appropriations. Article 3 is to rescind in part prior funding from the Community Preservation Committee. At the May 7th town meeting approved CPC funding in the amount of $350,000 to acquire an affordable unit identified as 10 Merrimack Way Unit C. This was in the hopes that the auction that was scheduled for the day of town meeting would be delayed and allow the town the opportunity to intervene. Unfortunately, the bank did not agree to delay it, and so by the time this vote was taken, the unit had already been sold to a private developer, and so therefore the $350,000 is no longer necessary. We funded that out of the fund balance, and so that $350,000, upon approval of town meeting, will go back into the CPC fund balance. Article 4 is an appropriation for the Community Preservation Committee Fund. When I last presented this to you, they had not yet met, and this is an older version of the warrant. We'll edit it. They did meet last week and heard a request from the Tyngsborough Public Library to do various preservation items. They're going to create an oral history of the Winslow School. They're going to order a new showcase piece to highlight some of the cool artifacts they have in the special collections room, and they're going to send off an old Tyngsborough map to be restored so that it's actually going to be viewable, and they'll get a display case. They asked for $49,479.78. This version came from town council. It's not totally updated. CPC liked the project but wanted to add a small contingency, so they actually approved $55,000, and that will come out of the fund balance. The second item is Sherburne Road Rec Parcel Phase 2. At a meeting in October, I'm going to ask the select board to name that parcel. I think that the CPC has a suggested name, but continuing to call it the Sherburne Road Parcel is not very great. This would be to finish some of the work that's already been done over there. So this would fund creating ADA accessible walkways about a half a mile, installing volleyball courts, which was part of the contract we put out for Phase 1. Unfortunately, it was over the budget, so we canceled it at the last minute. And it would also, how did I forget the pavilion? Fund the pavilion on the site, which would be a community gathering spot. The Community Preservation Committee voted 8-1 in favor of the project, but they also opted to add a contingency, so that $500,000 is now $550,000. And all of that is coming from the fund balance. Article 5 is an amendment to the town's general bylaw, specifically the section that talks about motorboats, which, for those that are confused, Massachusetts general law considers any personal watercraft a motorboat. So this also covers jet skis, or if you put a motor on a kayak, I guess, as well. Specifically here, we're looking to address an issue on Lake Muscoppic that's really been an issue forever, but was really bad this summer, which is that people come from outside of Tyngsborough, or even from Tyngsborough, but don't live on the lake. They put their boat or their jet skis in the water, and then they have to move the trailer and park it, 10 or 15 minutes away. So for the whole day, they keep the jet ski in the water, but when they come to shore to eat lunch or something, they're parking it on public shoreline, which is a nuisance, but also it restricts areas where our police department could evacuate somebody if they had an accident on the water. And the boat ramp is taken, and now all of the public shoreline is taken by people beaching these. There's no place for them to transfer a patient from the boat to an ambulance. So at the recommendation of the Lake Association and the police department, we're adding Section 6 here, which will ban personal watercraft from being parked or beached along any public shoreline, except in the case of emergency. So obviously there's a level of discretion there for the officer. We're clarifying here that it would be enforceable by the Tyngsborough Police Department or another duly authorized law enforcement agency. The state environmental police would be able to enforce this. Also, if Drake-It is out patrolling, which they only do with our officers, they could enforce it. The section currently limits fines, oddly enough, because this hasn't been updated since like the 80s, to $20. For this particular instance, we're recommending that it be $100 for the first offense and $250 for each subsequent offense. One item that's a change here from when you last saw it is in Section 7. In order for us to actually be able to collect those fines, we have to add language here that says that we'd be collecting it through the non-criminal disposition process, and it cites a section of law. This is the same section that lets, like, our school resource officer issue a citation for marijuana possession on school property.
Can I, watercraft versus motorboat?
Yes.
So watercraft is anything on the water. Motorboat has to be motorized.
Correct.
Yet, in the article, the title says watercraft, yet we're only talking about limiting beaching of motorboats.
That's a typo. It should say prohibition of beaching motorboats on the shore of Lake Muscatpick.
Okay, because my question was, because originally I was thinking, I mean, could you have like a bunch of canoes that are there? Is that a potential issue? I don't know the answer. I'm just sitting there. I wasn't sure what our intent was, whether it was all watercraft being beached, or is it just motorboats? So they'll have to,
The issue we're facing is boats and jet skis. I think that the thought is that the kayaks can be moved quicker if
you can
necessary.
just move them out of the way.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
But that is a typo. The title should reflect motorboat.
Okay. I was just sitting there, because I remember we had talked about it, and it was like, motorboat, watercraft, let's just make sure we're clear for everybody.
Okay. And then the last two are the zoning ones. Just a reminder for those at home, the public hearings on these will be in the planning board at 7 p.m. on Thursday, October 3rd and Thursday, October 17th. Article 6 is amending section 7.2, 7.2C, 7.2D. What is happening here is essentially taking regulations that appeared in different places of the bylaw and creating, as you scroll down, a much cleaner, I think, although it is still very text heavy, chart that really summarizes what you can do with signs in each district, organized by the type of sign. There's no, aside from clarifying in this amendment that billboards are prohibited, which they currently are, there's no substantive changes to the zoning bylaw. There's a lot of clarifications. One of the things that the zoning review committee did was looked at other decisions, like questions that came to the zoning board of appeals to say, okay, well, where was there ambiguity? On the planning board's website right now, where these zoning amendments reside, there's also a crosswalk that our consultant put together that kind of helps you visualize where something came from and was moved into here. So that's what Article 6 does. It addresses the actual regulations. Article 7 is related, but it clarifies the definitions. And there's only very minor changes there, if I could scroll past all these charts. So you can see that there's two real changes happening here. We're adding a definition of a billboard. Again, it didn't exist. Now the question comes up, how did the existing billboards end up there? I wish that I could give you a really smart sounding answer, but essentially for both billboards that are up, the applicants got variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals, essentially exempting them from all of the rules which prohibited a billboard. The bylaw never said billboards aren't prohibited, but it had other regulations, which obviously those signs don't meet, and so they got variances from all of those. The committee looked at all of the remaining parcels along Route 3, and we thought about, well, how can we craft a regulation so that it's not completely prohibited, but we don't end up with Route 3 littered with digital billboards? And I think the committee collectively, and Eric is on the committee, he can speak to this more than I can, felt like we should just prohibit them so that it's a fair process. You know, there was talk about restricting it to the size of the parcel, but at the end of the day, I think this was the cleanest way to do it. And then there was the gasoline station changeable copy sign wasn't accurately designed, and in fact, it showed up in a few places, and the question was like, well, what does it really mean? So we added a definition here as well. And this has all been reviewed by town council. The format is good, the content is good, and yeah, I think that's everything I want to say on those two. Again, nothing substantive here, just kind of reorganizing so the bylaw is a little easier to follow and removing inconsistencies where they existed.
Yeah, the billboard one was kind of a loophole, and it's one of those ones where we could, if we didn't put anything in there, technically it's not allowed. But yet somebody could go to court and say, well, they already have two, so what do you mean it's not allowed?
Right.
So we're codifying it by saying, no, not allowed. We have two, good enough.
And Mr. Chair, do we get revenue off of those billboards?
So, yes, on one of them,
We got revenue on both.
on both.
On the non-digital one, that agreement has expired. It was like a 10-year payment. On the digital one, we do get revenue every single year. That's kind of like because well, I should be clear. It's not because it's the billboard. They lease the spot the billboard is on from the
From
town.
us. It's on our property.
Interesting. And the other one is not on our property?
Correct. That was like a community impact fee, essentially. Again, this predates everybody on this board and myself.
Not from being alive.
Not from being alive, not from being alive, but from
Thanks
being
for agreeing to it.
on the board, yes.
I haven't
Thank
thought
you.
much about billboards before, but here we are. Okay,
Anyway.
thanks.
So, questions on the remaining warrant articles?
Straightforward explanation, thank you.
Straightforward, not a lot.
At
Not
your
a lot
meeting on
this one.
October 7th, I'll ask you to post it. I'll also ask you to vote your recommendations, and then Finance is meeting on October 8th, and I'll ask them to vote their recommendations as well.
Excellent. All right, I guess we'll go to select board reports. Why don't we start with select person Gilfus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just tapping on to what Mr. Loisel said about the Affordable Housing Trust interviews. If there are any renters out there, I would love to talk to you and facilitate that conversation. That's really a big gap right now, is just how to reach renters. So if you're watching, or if you know anyone that's a renter who would like to talk to us, I'd love to hear it. And then the other thing is, the Bears are very active this week. If you've been anywhere near Facebook, you've seen a lot of videos of the Black Bears trotting around town, including from Tyngsborough Police. So be safe and take down your feeders because they are very hungry and very active. And keep posting videos of them because I do like seeing them.
And you're not talking about the Chicago Bears, right?
I am not.
Okay,
The Black Bears trotting around town.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moran?
Yes, so yes, good evening. So yes, apologies for missing last meeting. I had some unexpected work stuff to deal with, and I just couldn't get out. So as to the comments about animals, I actually had a bobcat go through the back of my backyard, and it was probably 3.5 feet tall,
More videos.
pretty big. It wasn't video time. I had the dog. I freaked out. So it wasn't a
Safety first.
joyous thing and the whatever, so on that. The other thing is, this past weekend, I did stop by the new Player One facility, so that is open. I did talk to the owner's son, because he was there to answer questions and stuff, just if you walk in. They offer halal meats and stuff, so it's opens to a wider community on that stuff. So if you understand that word and what that means, it's great. So we're catering to a whole new crowd, meaning that business is not really as a town. But it was really a fantastic place. It has bowling in there, it has the laser darts, and then it has this ride you can go on. I didn't try it yet, but I'm eager to try that ride. So again, if you're out and about, check it out. Local place to go bowling, so that was really exciting. And then, again, I do look at the Nash Casino opening up. Be mindful when that does open up later this winter. Traffic, congestion, the mall has children still walking around outside. There's, people from their cars to the actual mall to walk around and stuff because they're not of age to go in there. So please be mindful when you are going there. The other thing I thought about too was the economic planner, or the economic stuff that we're talking about, and that the chair talked, how do we help look at the existing business or attract more? Is there a way, and I'm just doing this to ask the question that may exist already, but a list of the properties that are either buildings that could be used commercially, and then what types of licenses would be, recommended to go there? For instance, in town center, there is 1 or 2 possible buildings that could be taverns or a restaurant or maybe a pub, but it would also go to the license that's tied close to the town center, right? So they're like a matrix. There's a very busy matrix we just saw for the signage, all that stuff. Maybe we could put something out there that's a little bit eye-friendly for, hey, we invite these types of businesses.
Right.
This type of business could go in town center, this type.
It's a
And these are
fantastic
the
idea.
facilities or buildings and parcels that are available.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to partner with those building owners in town that have vacancies.
Yeah.
And so I think
That's a
that'd
great
be
idea.
interesting, because I have some people who've asked me that question, because they have some, and it's kind of like a fit, form, function. That's the whole concept of that. And then lastly, I just wanted to, I know we had citizens time earlier. I didn't want to get up and speak at that time, but I just want to mention discord in town and politics in general. It's always heated, right? And I think, Mr. Schneider got tied up into a thing that happens sometimes with elected officials and boards, and then people who have agendas outside of, like, what our rules are and how we are to govern. So I'm not knocking Mr. Schneider, but I think that for myself, I try to stay away as a member of a board, my opinions on things. And so, I think this is just a good opportunity, maybe, whatever he's gonna do for reconciling that, but I just think it's a good opportunity to reiterate that regardless of what my personal views are, I think we all have a vested interest in town, and that our town is what we care about. We care about the budgets, we care about the personnel who work in the facilities, we care about our police. Tonight, look at that wonderful citation that was given to Officer Evan Donnelly, right? That was great stuff. And that's the stuff I think as a board, we can agree we want to showcase that. We want to showcase the economic development in town. But we certainly don't want to get mixed up in unnecessary politics that we could disagree the color of an orange. Oh, wait, it's orange? But the whole concept is that type of stuff belongs in a polite conversation, maybe over a beer or a club soda. But again, discord, being friendly, agree to disagree, and move on. That's really what I wanted to say about that type of stuff. So thank you.
Thank you. And actually piggybacking off of that, because I didn't know Mr. Murphy was going to be here, and I didn't know that you were going to talk about it. I did want to make sure. It is election season. Last day to register to vote is the 26th, I believe, of October. If you're not registered, please register. If you want to make sure, there's the website. You can check and see whether you're registered to vote. Town clerk is doing a fantastic job getting people registered. I encourage everybody to vote, regardless of your affiliation. It is uniquely democratic to be able to go out and vote. And if you look at some of the things that happen in other places in the world, they don't have the opportunity. We do. Similar to what you were talking about and what Mr. Murphy was talking about, this is a small town. We may disagree with our neighbors when it comes to politics. We may disagree with each other. And that's okay, so long as we do it in a civil manner. I don't want to see sign vandalism. That's not what the town is about. It really is childish. It's and it may be kids. I hope that it's people that don't know better. But at the end of the day, when the election is over, we're still going to be neighbors, and we're still going to be dealing with what's happening in the town, and we need to be civil. And I'll take it one step further. We need to be good to each other, right? No name calling. It's it's sad that I'm even having to say something like that, but I think that this town is better than that. There are all sorts of things that happen, and I definitely feel free to voice your opinion. Don't be shy, but you actually may be able to get a lot further if you can speak intelligently about why you feel a certain way, and you certainly don't have to do it with names. So let's show people what Tyngsborough is about. The thing I think about is the way we act is setting a model for our kids, and our kids are going to see if we're rude and they're going to act that way, and that's not really what we want to perpetuate. So use your it's your civil right to vote. Please do it. Don't not vote because you think it doesn't matter and then complain. It really is, it's our duty to go out there and vote, but do it in a nice way.
And Mr. Chair, people
Sure.
can go to vote411.org. It's a nonpartisan site to check your registration or get registered to vote if you are not. Lots of helpful information about deadlines and dates and how to get information. So vote411.org.
Thank you. So with that, I guess I will entertain a motion to go into executive session
So moved.
under exemption 2.
Under under exemption 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, interim chief of police.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote.
In favor.
In favor.
I'm also in favor. Our next
I need to
meeting,
work before being.
no
clerk
worries.
someday.
Our next meeting is October 7th. Town meeting, October 22nd. That's special/fall town meeting. Please be there with that. Good night, everybody.